Hi everyone, and welcome to the Salted Peppers YouTube channel, where we cook for real life using real food and we keep it real simple. I'm so excited today to get started with this apple cake. I really wanted to cook a cake under pressure, but I wasn't sure how it was going to turn out, and I didn't want to go with a cheesecake. That's what everybody seems to be doing. They rave about it, so be sure to try that. But I wanted to make something with apples because I had 2 bags of apples that I needed to use up, so I thought that this would be a great recipe. So I came up with the recipe, and I've done a lot of trial and error with it. So before we get started, I just want to talk real quick about the different types of pans that you can use. So I had this very high, I guess, casserole dish you would call it, and that is what I tried to use for the first 2 tests of this apple cake. However, even though I put the pressure to like 60 minutes with a 30-minute natural release, it just wasn't getting done in the center. So after talking to a friend of mine, Robin, we were talking about using springform pans, and I thought, oh, it might leak all over, and then you have to put parchment, and no. Then I thought, well, I've got these 8-inch cake rounds, and so we're gonna give that a try today to see how that works. I have not tested this out, so join me and let's see if it works. Now these are 8-inch around and 2-inch high. You want to make sure that you have ones that are at least 2 inches high. If they're 3 inches high, both of them will not fit in the Foodi together, but I've already tested these, and these 2 will stack in. So the first thing I did was I used a pan grease recipe, which I will link to below, to grease the pans. And I used the silicone basting brush just to make sure that I get it evenly spread on the pans. Now you could use traditional butter and flour or Crisco and flour, however you like to grease your pans. And the next thing we're gonna do is get the topping done. So the topping's gonna go on the bottom, because when we flip it over, then we will have the apple slices on the top. So I have 2 Granny Smith apples, some brown sugar and cinnamon in this bowl, and we're gonna go ahead and slice up these apples. So I just cut them down the center and cut them into 4 pieces per half. And then just take it down to get that core out. I find this to be the easiest way. With a paring knife, just gently go underneath the skin and peel down, and then get all the rest of the skin off. And then each one of these I'm going to slice into 3 sections, 3 or 4. I'm just gonna slice down. Now this is an optional step. You do not have to include this. You could chop up the apples and just put them right in the batter, but we're gonna do both for this. Then I'm gonna throw them in the bowl and get them coated. And you wanna get them coated with the brown sugar and the cinnamon kind of right away so that they don't start to brown. So we'll just get those coated, and we'll just keep adding as we cut. We'll just keep adding the apples and keep coating them. Oops. I'm gonna finish cutting up these 2 apples for our topping, and then we'll get started on the cake batter. Okay, so we're finished slicing up our Granny Smith apples. Just give this a quick stir. I'm gonna get the apple cake batter going by first creaming the sugar and the butter. So in your KitchenAid or stand mixer, or of course you could use a handheld portable mixer as well. Add in your brown sugar and your white sugar and your 1.5 sticks of butter. Now, I don't know about you, but when I want to make a cake, I don't usually plan ahead, and so I don't have the butter out and it's not room temperature. So a little secret you can do is put your butter into a plastic sealable baggie, and then pour some hot water in it and let it sit for a few minutes, and it will come to room temperature fairly quickly. You can also do that with your eggs, and they'll come to room temperature. Okay, so we're gonna get this started. So I've got a cup of brown sugar and a cup of white sugar and 1.5 sticks of butter. We're gonna turn the mixer on and get the brown sugar, white sugar, and butter creaming together, and it'll become a nice uniform mixture, and then we'll add in the rest of the ingredients. So while your mixer is mixing up the sugars and the butter, we wanna get our apples spread out on each pan. We're gonna do that just by taking an apple slice that's coated in the brown sugar and the cinnamon and laying it right on the bottom of the pan. Now some are gonna have more of the brown sugar cinnamon mixture, and that is fine. I like to save the little ones for the center. I can make a better design that way. But anyway, you just lay them down. They're not totally uniform in thickness, and that's not going to make a difference for this recipe. So we're just gonna go along the edges here. And they all go in one direction, and that will help you get a nice uniform look here at the bottom of your cake pan. So that's how the outer layer will look, and I'm gonna repeat the process for the inner layer with some of those smaller pieces. We're gonna do this on both cake pans, and then they can just sit to the side until we're finished with our cake batter. Okay, great. So that's what it's gonna look like. And then I'll get the other pan done, and we will continue to build our cake batter. So we have both of our 8-inch cake pans lined with the apples that were tossed in cinnamon and brown sugar. If there's any left over, just sprinkle it on top. It's gonna create a nice little like caramel type of topping to your cake that just tastes delicious. So don't throw it away, just sprinkle it right on top. The next thing we need to do is get the eggs, which we're gonna add one at a time into our mixer. And I always recommend putting your egg into a small bowl before you put it into your cake batter. And that way, if you have any shells, you can get them out before it goes into the cake batter. So let's turn this on low, and I'm gonna add in 3 eggs. Let them mix a little bit in between each addition. Probably want the speed up at about medium. Okay. After the last egg goes in, you can add in your vanilla. This is 1 tablespoon of vanilla. All right, that looks great. Just gonna give the sides of the bowl a little scrape down here, just to make sure we get all the vanilla and all the sugars and everything into the batter. All right. Once this is completely blended, then we're gonna add in the dry ingredients. And I have here 3 cups of flour, a half a teaspoon of salt, and a tablespoon of cinnamon, and also a teaspoon of baking soda. So I'm gonna just give this a little mix just to kind of get it all incorporated. And we're gonna start with the dry ingredients, and we're gonna add in 1/3 of the dry ingredients, half of the oil, followed by 1/3 of the dry ingredients, the remaining oil, and then the last 1/3 of the dry ingredients. And I eyeball that, I certainly don't measure it out. Okay, that looks good. Now keep in mind when making any kind of cake batter that has baking soda or baking powder in it, once you add that to the wet ingredients, you kind of need to keep moving along because it will start the leavening process or the rising process. And you don't want it to do all of that before you get it into either the oven or, as we're gonna do today, into the Ninja Foodi. So we are gonna, after we do this, then we'll chop up our apples, get them added in, and get them in the pans and then into the Ninja Foodi. To make this a little bit easier for me, I have 2 different kind of KitchenAid mixers. One is the lift kind, and the other one is a bowl that comes down and up. This one, you lift. I'm gonna do that so that I don't get the flour all over the counter. I've been known to do that. So we're gonna put in about 1/3. And then give it a mix. While that's mixing, I'm gonna start cutting up the chunks of apples. Okay, that looks good. So now we're gonna add in half of our oil. And let that blend and finish chopping up these apples. This cake calls for 3 cups of apples, which I found to be about 3 medium-sized Granny Smith apples. And if it's short a little bit or a little heavy, it won't make a difference in the cake. All right, that looks great. So let's get the second third. Now again, I'm gonna turn this off and lift it up. It's looking so good. So the second third of the flour goes in. And we'll give that a mix. I'm just mixing on low right now. If I turn this really on high, we'd have a flour party. Be everywhere. So just mix it on low. Okay, that's perfect. Now we're gonna add in the rest of the oil. And I'm also going to give the cake bowl, or the mixer bowl, just a little bit of a scrape down here with the spatula. And that will get the rest of that flour incorporated into the mix. Okay, very good. All right, that's looking perfect. Now let's get the remaining third of our flour in and finish that mixing. It's a beautiful batter and it smells really good. All right, great. Okay, one more scrape down of the sides here, and we should be ready to add in our apples. Now you could fold them in, but I'm just gonna throw them right in the stand mixer on low speed. And I'm not even measuring the apples. It's not gonna make a big difference. I mean, if you have more apples, it'll be a little more appley. Now you don't want to add in like 5 apples because that will take up too much room and you'll end up with the moisture content will be too much because the apples do release moisture as they cook. And remember, we're doing this in the foodie, and so we're going to keep all that moisture in because we're not baking. We're going to be making this cake under pressure, which I think is just so cool. And it produces a really nice cake. Okay, I've got 2 more apples to go. Now I'm gonna turn this off. I'm gonna turn the mixer off while I finish cutting up the apples because I don't wanna overbeat the batter, okay? So we're just gonna turn it off and then I'm gonna add them in and do one final mix. I'm just gonna finish slicing up this last little piece of apple. Chopping up, actually. Add it in. Give this one final mix on low, and that looks good. All right, now we're gonna fill our pans with the cake batter. I'm just gonna get this off of here. Take off my attachment there. All right, now the best way to fill cake pans is by weighing them if you want really even amounts of batter in each of your pans, but I'm not gonna worry about that. I'm just gonna try to get as close as I can. So I'm gonna take a scoop and just start filling this cake batter around And then we'll go to the other one, do the same thing. You want your cake pan to be between 1/2 and 2/3 of the way full. This cake will rise a little bit, but what happens is it rises up and it also settles back down. It's a very dense but moist cake, extremely flavorful. All right, so let's do that, and then let's switch out the pans. So we have 8 scoops in that one. And we'll put 8 scoops, and then I'll just go back and forth until we use all the batter. I love this cookie scoop, by the way. This is the large one, so it's good for like muffin size. They also have small and medium, which I use all the time for making cookies. And these are a Pampered Chef product that I will link to below. Okay, just a little bit more in that one, and then we'll start dividing equally. Just take this off here so I can see a little bit better in there. Okay, so first I'm going to go ahead and cover each one of these pans with a little bit of aluminum foil. It's important when you want to cook a layered cake in a pressure cooker that you have them where they have flat walled sides. A lot of times the sides will be angled a little bit, and then if you went to stack, they would really slide inside of each other, and that could create a problem. So these are by Fat Daddy-O, and I will link to those below because these are great cake baking pans. They're very thick walled and they heat evenly. I really love them. Okay. Just a little bit of covering. It's okay if it doesn't go all the way because we do want some steam to escape. And then for the one that's going to be on the bottom, I'm going to go ahead and just put a few little holes. I'm hoping that helps because they're going to be on top of each other. Hoping that helps to release some steam because there will be a little bit of a gap in between these two. Okay, so we've got our pan stacked. Now, I tried this couple different ways. I tried to use the rack, but when you put the rack in, no matter how you configure it, or at least no matter how I configured it, these were too high to get the pressure lid on. So I had to kind of come up with something to be able to put these in, lower them out, and everything. And so we're gonna make like a little tin foil, aluminum foil carry thing. I don't know what to call it, but that's what we're gonna do. The other thing is I have 2 cups of room temperature water in here. And I don't want the cake pan to be on the very bottom, so I just have this dish that is bake proof, so I can put it in here. And I've tried it a couple times. It does not crack or anything. Now, if I had something that was stainless steel, I would probably use it, but this was the exact height that I wanted, just to raise that bottom layer off of the, out of the water. Okay. So I want to take a nice sized piece of the aluminum foil, probably about like that, maybe 3 feet. And I'm just going to fold it over itself. Till we get a nice strip. Now this is a sturdy strip. You don't want to use the dollar store or the inexpensive brands of foil for this. I'm afraid that they might rip, but I have tried this out several times and it works great. And this would work for anything that you're cooking, okay? Whether it's, a cake or any kind of dish that you want to put inside and it doesn't work with the rack. So then I just make a little handle, like a little Easter basket. Isn't that cute? You can see it definitely will hold these two. And we will layer them in and kind of fold this down on each other just so it gets in there so the pressure lid will go on. We're going to put the pressure lid on. Put it to seal. Okay, very important. Make sure we are cooking this under pressure, so you want to turn that to seal. And we'll turn the machine on, go to pressure. We want it to be on high pressure, and we're gonna do this for 35 minutes. Okay, so here we go. Now it's gonna keep going around in the circle, and it takes about 8 minutes from what I've timed with various things I've made in the Ninja Foodi. It takes about 8 minutes for it to come up to pressure. So we just have about 45 seconds here left to go, and then what I'm gonna do is let this natural release for 30 minutes. So what that means is that I'm gonna keep the vent back here to the seal position. If we wanted to immediate release, we would turn it to the vent, but we're gonna keep it to the sealed position, keep it under pressure for 30 minutes just to let those centers get done. And what should be happening is when we count down, this will turn off and the keep warm button will turn back on. Now the keep warm function, what I've noticed on the Ninja Foodi is that it automatically comes on after every cooking cycle unless you turn it off. And I've done a couple of practices with this, and what I've found is if once the unit gets to pressure, if you turn it off during the pressure time, it will stay off after it is counted down. But I didn't do that in the beginning. I just hit start, so it automatically defaults to the keep warm. The keep warm is not designed to heat food or cook food, but just to do, as the button says, keep it warm. So I am guessing that that is gonna have a temperature of about 140 degrees or so, since that is the food safe temperature for keeping food warm. So I'm assuming it's gonna at least be 140, but it's not gonna be 350 or anything like that. So I'm not worried about the cake cooking. But that added heat in there, I think, is just gonna help make sure that the inside is completely done. So we'll just let this count up till 30 minutes, and in the meantime I'm gonna enjoy a cracker with some egg salad that I made. And of course, you know, I hard-boiled the eggs in the Ninja Foodi. Super fast, really easy, and they peel like a dream. I have never had eggs that peel so easily as I do when I make them in the Ninja Foodi. All right, we just have a few seconds left to go. This is counting up on the keep warm setting for 30 minutes. And now we're gonna go ahead and manually release what's left of the pressure, which really isn't a whole lot. During this whole 30-minute process that I had it naturally releasing the pressure, I didn't see anything come out or hear anything, but apparently it was releasing it because we hardly had any pressure come out. Now the moment of truth. We open it up. All right, well, good. One of my fears was that everything would be all over the place, but that did not happen, so that's wonderful news. Now what I'm gonna do is take a quick peek in here and just see if the cake is done in the center. Now remember, we can put this back up to pressure if we need to. For a few more minutes, but I'm fairly confident that it's going to be just fine. But let's take a look. Oh, it's looking good. Oh yes, it's perfect. I can tell even without testing it because I've made this recipe several times and I can tell, and it's perfect. Okay, wonderful. We're gonna put this back on. Now, if your top is a little puffy and a little uneven, don't worry about it. It will settle down as it continues to rest and cool. But for right now, I'm gonna get this heated, or get this handle back on and lift carefully onto your cooling rack. I'm gonna go ahead and close this. And there's still a bunch of water in there, and I'll dump that out because we're gonna make the icing for this cake right in the Ninja Foodi too. And we're gonna be using brown sugar and butter to make the icing. And it's so easy to clean up with this non-stick surface that's in the pot of the Ninja Foodi. I absolutely love it. Oh, look at this. Now I'm gonna grab, these pans are still hot, so I'm just gonna grab these little silicone mitts here. And so I'm glad I put the holes in here. It has released. Now let's see if the bottom one is done. It is. Oh, this is beautiful. All right, perfect. Now it's gonna look a little bit wet here. That is fine, do not worry about it. This is an extremely moist cake and you're just gonna love it. So I'm gonna let these cool for about 5 to 10 minutes and then I'm gonna flip them over onto my cooling rack. So I've let these cool for about 10 minutes on my cooling rack and I decided to grab out another one because I wanna flip these in a certain way and I don't wanna run the risk. This is a very moist cake. I don't want it to break on me. So what I'm gonna do is put each one on its own cutting board, and these are still a little hot, so I'm sorry, its own cooling rack. And then place the cooling rack on top of the cake pan. Put my little handy dandy thing so I don't burn my fingers. And then I'm just grabbing the edge of the cake pan as well as the cooling rack and flipping it upside down and then setting it back down. And then this should lift off just perfectly fine. Oh my goodness. Look at that, guys. That is just simply beautiful. Oh, I'm so excited. It's such a pretty pattern with the apples. Okay, I'm gonna do the same thing. So let me just kind of rearrange, to push some things around here. Just rearrange. I love these cooling racks. These are from Pampered Chef and they're stackable, and I just absolutely love them. Great for when you're making cookies. And you have limited counter space, you know, it's perfect. Okay, same thing with this one. Flip over. Now hopefully, sometimes these legs like to collapse on me, but I didn't do it that way. Okay, and then this one. And look how easily it lifts off. That's why I love using that pan grease. And again, I will link to that recipe below. Okay, perfect. So as soon as they are cooled, which is gonna take about an hour or so, or you could pop them into the refrigerator and they'd cool a little quicker, then we'll come back and make up some icing right in the Ninja Foodi and decide how we're gonna decorate. So our cakes have completely cooled now, and I know it seems like it happened like that, but it actually took about 2 hours. So they've been sitting on the counter and they are cooled now, and we're gonna make our icing, which is super easy, and we're gonna make it right in the Ninja Foodi. Dump in 1 stick of butter, 1 cup of brown sugar, and 1/3 cup of heavy cream. So we'll dump those in. Then we're gonna turn the Ninja Foodi, let's turn it on. We're gonna turn it to the sear saute mode. We want it on high, and then just hit start. We don't need to set a time here for this because we'll know when it's finished up. And the Foodi actually does not give you an option to set time. The Instant Pot, you can set the time for saute, but I think the Ninja Foodi figures you're gonna be right here. If you're sauteing, you should be paying attention. Now, I'm gonna be using the silicone coated whisk. You are not supposed to use metal in this pot. It is nonstick and you can scratch the inner lining. So you wanna make sure that you use something, whether it's a whisk like this, which I will link to below, because I really happen to love this one. Or you could also use like a big spatula or something. So we have this on high, and we're just going to allow the butter and the brown sugar and the cream to mix together and melt. And then it's gonna start to like bubble. I'm not gonna bring it to a full-on boil, but it is gonna get to where it's starting to bubble a little bit. This isn't something that you have to whisk continuously, but I just like to move it around so it melts a little quicker. Okay, while that's heating up, I wanted to talk about the powdered sugar that I have. I have sifted this and aerated it. And the reason why I did that and took the time to do the extra step of sifting it is because when I add it into this hot mixture, I don't want it to clump up. I want to have a smooth icing for our cake. So it is better that you go ahead and sift it. Melted and incorporated in here, so I'm just gonna let it heat up till we start to see some bubbles forming on the top. Then I will remove this from the heat using my little silicone finger pot holders, which I absolutely love, and I will link to below. And then I thought about how I wanted to arrange this cake. I mean, it is so beautiful just like it is. So you could certainly serve this just as is, and you'd have 2 individual cakes. But I wanna get that height. I wanna get a layered cake look. So I picked the one that was not as pretty. There's 2 of them, and the other one is a little prettier on top. So what I'm gonna do is, we're gonna ice in this, let the icing drip down, so it's got nice marks there. Then I'm gonna let the icing cool a little bit, put the other layer on top, and then we're gonna ice in that just on the edges so that we can see this beautiful apple design. I think it's gonna be spectacular. As this starts to bubble, you do want to give it a stir. We don't want to scorch anything here. And the bottom of this pot gets really hot. The one thing I like about making this icing is you don't have to really take the temperature of it. You know, if you're making a caramel sauce, you usually have to take the temperature, but you don't have to do that with this. You can just eyeball it. And we're almost there, guys. Take this out for a few minutes. I'm starting to see some bubbles form. And when they are uniform along the top, but before it gets to a real boil, we will remove this from the heat. Oh my gosh, it smells so good. It smells just like caramel. I think we're ready. It has a lot of bubbles right on top. I don't want this to boil though. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn the Ninja Foodi off. Give this a stir and remove it from the heat. These little grips are so great. Okay, so now that it's removed from the heat, I'm gonna stir in my vanilla. And then gradually add in the powdered sugar. Stirring as we go. This is gonna allow the icing to thicken a little bit, and it will thicken more as it cools, and you'll see how that happens. We're gonna glaze the cake while it's still pretty warm, so it runs down and creates nice lines. But then we're gonna let it cool a little bit to put that middle layer in. It's looking good. Whisking and turning will help break up any clumps that are in there of the powdered sugar. But because we sifted it, there aren't as many as if you just dumped in unsifted powdered sugar. All right, looking good. Let's go ahead and get the rest in. This is a recipe that I adapted from A Taste of Home. Their icing recipe called for twice as much powdered sugar. I do not like a super, super sweet icing, and this is still gonna be pretty sweet, but it's not as sweet as if we added double the powdered sugar. And I think they did that so that it would be a real thick icing, but we don't need that for this apple cake. So we're at a good consistency for a glaze, and what I'm gonna do is just pick this pot up and pour it over the cake. Now I do wanna reserve some because we still have the top, and I'm just gonna pour this in a circular motion, starting at the middle and going around to the edge. That should be good. And the reason why I have this pan underneath is obviously because this is going to drip down. It's going to create all these great little streaks, and I wanted something to be down there. Just kind of push it over to the edge and just let it go down. If you need to add a little more, you can. There's no right or wrong here, guys. Okay, so we've got that first little layer on. Now I'm gonna put a second layer on as well. We're gonna use almost all of this, but I wanna reserve some for the second layer. Oh, isn't that beautiful? It reminds me of a caramel apple. And it's thickening up because it's cooling down, and that's exactly what we want. So once you get that second layer on top, just let it sit. Let it drip down, let it sit, let it cool, because we want this to be pretty cool before we put the second layer on. So after I put those 2 layers of the caramel icing, I just popped this in the refrigerator for a few minutes just to have it set up before I put the second layer on. Now I have a very large spatula here that I'm going to use to help me move this on, but you could also use 2, or you could really pick it up with your hands. That would be fine as well. So I'm just going to slide this off. Now, if you noticed, I don't know if you can tell in the camera, but I've got a little slope on both layers of the cake. So I just made sure that where the high spot here on the first layer, I'm going to put the high spot over here. So hopefully we're going to have a nice even cake. So I'm just going to push this off right on there. Oh my gosh, so pretty. You can move it around with your fingers if you need to. Oh, I'm loving this. Now, I thought about putting this into a pastry bag and really being precise with it. And I just said, nah, I'm not gonna do it. So what I'm gonna do is just pour this icing here, right on the edge. See, I don't want it to go, I don't want it to cover up the beautiful design, but I do want it to go over the edge. So I'm just gonna pour and let it drip down just naturally. Isn't that beautiful? And like super easy. And it really looks like a caramel apple, right? Then if you want to get super fancy, you could take these in and just do little marks coming in. It would just give a little extra design to your cake and reveal some of those apples a little more, but totally not necessary. It's just so pretty. It's hard for me to get to this way. There we go. And you just keep going around like this as the icing gets a little more set. Wow, I'm loving this cake. It is so pretty. Kind of reminds me of dripping candle wax, but it's going to be absolutely delicious. I do see some places here where it's not completely flush. You could take some of your extra icing and just go right in there too, but certainly not necessary because I think it's pretty just the way it is. And then all you're going to want to do is transfer this to your cake pan. Perfect. Let me just get these out of the way, and I will cut a slice. I'm just loving this. Okay, here we go. Let's cut it in your direction. Look at that. Of course, I think that edge over there is fallen and I can't see it. So that's the piece I'm going to taste. Oh, that is so good. You get great flavors of the apple. It's not too sweet, which I really like. The Granny Smith apple is a little on the tart side, and I love to use it for baking just for that reason. I don't like things overly sweet. This is perfect. You get that little hint of the caramel icing, which is a little sweeter, and it balances out perfect. This is definitely a cake you want to do, and it's all done in the Ninja Foodi. I'm gonna put this slice of apple cake on a plate and devour it. It's gonna be my dinner tonight. So don't forget, if you like this video, give me a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe over there and hit the bell to get notified of the next video that we put out. And as always, thank you for tuning into the Salted Peppers YouTube channel, where we cook for real life using real food and we keep it real simple. See you next time. Best cake ever. You've got to try it. Ninja Foodi, 100%.
made this cake.